This is the lecture on absolute value inequality word expressions. Okay, so basically we went over absolute value equalities, we went over absolute value inequalities. Now we're going to take that and we're going to, sometimes the SAT, or a lot of times the SAT will throw you kind of these word problems, and it's going to deal with the absolute value inequalities. So basically we're going to figure out right now how to take an inequality and shift the center of balance. Okay, so that sounds a little confusing. Let's break it down. Right now, let's look at absolute value of x is less than 3. Now, what did I say? I said absolute value of x equals 3. That essentially means that there's a distance of 3 from the origin. Here's the origin. Here's 3. Distance of 3. Here's negative 3. Another distance of 3, right? In this case, let's look at the absolute value of x is less than 3. Okay? Again, it's basically everything within here that's less than 3 and greater than negative 3, right? Like we said here, that's how we would have solved it. But because it's simply x inside the absolute value, that means it's automatically centered around 0. And that's basically all we've been dealing with so far, where the x is centered around 0. And it's symmetric. Right? There's 3 on one side and 3 on the other side. Symmetric. The window, what we call the window, is basically the plus or minus value from the origin. It's easy, right? 3 across, 3 to the right, 3 to the left. So, the window is plus or minus 3. And that's what we've been dealing with. You are pretty familiar with it. You probably know what I'm talking about. But, what if we wanted to define the interval centered around a different number? Let's just say b, for example. Okay, and with the same window. For example, what if we wanted to change the center to 4? Right? So how would we do that? It's basically what we're going to do is figure out how we would do that. Change the value, change the center, from the origin, which is where we started, to any number of our choice. So let's start over here. Express the interval centered around 3 with a window of plus or minus 2, using an absolute value inequality. Okay, let's just build it from the ground up, using that statement. Okay, express the interval centered around 3. So we know it's centered around 3, with the window of plus or minus 2. So plus 2 is what? This is 3 plus 2. Or minus 2. This would be 3 minus 2. It's basically taking the center and you're adding 2 or subtracting 2. So how do we express that in this inequality? X, which is the center, is 3 plus 2 is the highest you can go. 3 minus 2 is the lowest you can go. Okay? Now treat this like an equation. If I'm going to solve for the single values out here, what do we have that is common across the board, across these two? Right? They have 3, which is common, right? So, what if we want to get rid of that, to simplify it? Let's subtract 3 from here. Subtract 3 from here. But we've also got to subtract 3 from the middle, because they all have to be equal, right? If we're going to change one part of it, we're going to change all the others to keep it all consistent and all equal. So, what is this going to yield? It's going to be negative 2 is less than x minus 3, I have over here, which is less than, this cancels out, positive 2. Alright, now if we were to have something like this, 3 or negative 3, x and positive 3, how can you simplify that into an absolute value? How can you work backwards and put it into an absolute value? Essentially, what would this be? Boom. So, if you look here, you put negative 3 in here, it'll be less than 3. If you put positive 3, it's 3, right? So, this is what the answer would be if it was simplified like that. So we look back here. This time, instead of just x, we've got x minus 3. So the absolute value of x minus 3 is going to be less than 2. Does that make sense? So in variable form, here it is. Here's the formula. That's all you're going to need to know. X minus b, being the center, is less than c, the plus or minus variable. Okay, and essentially this is really all you're going to need. What we're going to do is, in the following examples, is really use kind of the steps that we made here and kind of just really make sure you understand what's going on and why we came to this conclusion. And then I'll just show you how we can just use this formula, plug it in, which is good for the SATs. Because you can just, you don't have time to do all this, but what we want you to do and study along is for you to understand exactly how this is coming about. So that if you do happen to forget this, for example, you know how to build it. You can do it yourself. You can make the formula yourself, and you can solve it that way. Okay? Let's try example number 1. Define the interval centered around 10 with the window of plus or minus 5 using the absolute value. Okay, so let's build it again. Here's 10. It wants plus or minus 5. This would be 10 plus 5. This would be 10 minus 5, right? So, what would we have here? X is bounded by what? 10 plus 5 or 10 minus 5. What's the common number here? It's 10. So let's just subtract 10 from all parts. And what you're going to get is minus 5 is less than x minus 10, less than 5. Does that make sense? And now we have here, they're looking for the absolute value, right? So, how do we turn this into an absolute value? That's right, we take the middle, put it inside the absolute value, that's less than 5. Okay? This is the answer. Now, they're going to throw in a lot of words in their word problems to try to throw you off, try to confuse you, but hopefully, because you understand it so well, we're going to battle through that. So, let's try to break this down. In manufacturing a 25-pound disc weight, the allowed error in weight must be less than 0.1 pounds. Express the range of the allowed weight in pounds for this disc using the absolute value. Okay, so basically they're trying to make a 25-pound disc weight. Whatever that is, they're trying to make a 25-pound weight. Okay, and the allowed error in weight must be less than 0.1 pounds. That means that, say the machine gets messed up or whatever, it can't be more than 0.1 off, 0.1 pounds off. Or else, they're going to have to throw it out, remanufacture it, or whatever. So, basically, the standard is 25. What's the plus or minus interval? Right. Just erase that here. It's 25 plus 0.1 or 25 minus 0.1. Okay, so let's put this right back into the equation. We've got, or the inequality, excuse me. We've got 25 minus 0.1 being the lowest, put x, and 25 plus 0.1 being the highest boundary point. Now, what's the common number here? It's 25, but we gotta do it in the middle also. And what answer are we going to get? This comes out to negative 0.1, x minus 25, positive 0.1. We're not done. We're looking for the absolute value. So let's put this inside the absolute value. And is less than 0.1. Okay, so you can see here how using the formula would have been really easy, right? For this one over here, the formula is what? I'm going to write it over here on the side so you know. Is x minus b being the center is less than c being the plus or minus value. So here, what's the plus or minus value? 5. What's the center? 10. So x minus 10, the center, is less than 5. Boom, you could have just entered it in, you would have had it. Here, what's the center? 25. What's the plus or minus? 0.1. Okay, it's a pretty easy formula, but again, we're teaching this just so if you forget the formula, if you're in a rush and you just can't remember it for the life of you, you know how to solve it from the ground up, so you don't have to just waste a question. Okay, so hopefully this will give you a little bit more of an understanding of how you can switch around the center.